Okay, so we're going to talk about the unpredictables of surrogacy, delays, grief, loss of the unknown. And so, one thing to know is these are wordier slides because obviously there's so much to share about this. I'm going to do my best to go a little bit quickly in just explaining this information, but I will want to poke and prod and see if any of you are willing to share experiences, thoughts, feedback, anything that can be helpful to contribute to a bigger conversation. So please take those opportunities if you feel like you are comfortable doing so. Uh, so who am I? I'm Dr. Sadaf. I'm from Embra Health. Embra Health is a mental health care company focused on supporting family building, specifically in this mental health space. I feel like there was just a disparity in this. So here we are, and here's what we're doing. A fun fact, I'm a prior egg donor. I have a connection to some of my donor conceived, some of the children from my donor experiences. And so, yeah, really invested in this world of third party reproduction and just helping families become families. Today, we're going to talk about many of these sort of bigger concepts, this emotional toll of waiting, which is never fun for anybody. We're also going to talk about how much the brain hates the unknown and how to help your brain deal with the unknown. We will briefly cover loss and when loss happens in surrogacy and its friend, unfortunately, that we don't love, but we want to make friends with is grief, when grief shows up as well, whether it's been there or whether it's coming. Overall, the hopeful takeaway is that you'll get some strategies or some ideas or some perspectives in helping you manage mental calm and healing throughout this experience and even beyond. So, welcome to Surrogacy. Obviously, if you're here, you are, I assume, a gestational carrier, interested in becoming a gestational carrier, interested in doing another journey. So that already speaks volumes about your heart, your courage, your capacity to show up for something bigger than yourself. And there's also a lot that comes with this. So being real about this, yes, this is a beautiful thing to do, but this can be very unpredictable. This can be emotionally challenging. This can be complex. And so, that's how life likes to work for most of us. I hope in this conversation, you can walk away with a little bit more clarity, with more guidance, just some tools. Really, that's the whole point. So let's talk about waiting first. Nobody loves waiting. And unfortunately, surrogacy and in pregnancy, that's the big elephant in the room that's always putting pressure on what's happening. In surrogacy, it's particularly challenging because you're on timelines and timelines shift, timelines ebb and flow. There are multiple people involved in this planning of pregnancy. Transfers can get pushed, meds can get changed, legal paperwork will drag or get complicated. Maybe your intended parents are like, okay, let's do it now. Wait, actually, we want to do it in 4 months. So there's a lot of things happening. And I think sometimes for a carrier, you may feel like you're the last to know. Like, okay, all of this is being decided and I'm just waiting for the update. And now it's here. And, I really can't do anything about it anyway. That unpredictability, even though that's normal, sometimes I think feels personal. And I can relate to this too, where like, look, I'm ready. Like my body's ready, my life is ready, my energy's ready. Mentally, I'm clocked in. And now you're saying that this can't happen for another 4 months. And that could almost feel like it's a personal experience, like a personal attack. How it feels, kind of, I've already covered. Definitely frustrating. I've done everything right. Why is this happening? Why are we here? Resentment. This can be sort of that experience of like, why aren't you guys doing your part? Like, I'm ready to go. What is happening here? Numbness. I can't get my hopes up too high. I don't want to be disappointed. I think this one's relatable. Where in the beginning of the journey, you're just like, I don't want to get too excited. I don't know if we're going to pass this step or what's going to happen here. Even in the beginning of a pregnancy, it's just hard to see it through sometimes emotionally because you're just like, I don't know what's going to happen. And the numbness becomes a coping strategy, but not the most helpful one. Self-doubt. Am I being too emotional, too impatient? Is this a me thing? This is, I think, also a very relatable experience. What will help? With this experience of like a lot of unknowns and variables, you want to focus on control. Control is anxiety's friend. When anxiety is revving up, control is like, I got you. I'm going to give you some certainty, or I'm going to make sure we can get some certainty. But in surrogacy, there's very little that you can actually control. Like you can't control when the medicine's going to line up to have a transfer date at a specific time, but you can control smaller things. And in your case as a carrier, you can focus on routine. You can focus on rest. You can focus on rituals. Maybe this is where you start to do meal planning. Meal planning is something you could totally control. Get excited about recipes, make meals. This is something that's occupying your time and that makes you feel grounded. So routines, rituals, focusing on the small behaviors that are fully in your control, that's going to feel really helpful to take over some of those bigger emotions associated with waiting. The timeline is also something to be mindful of. So adding cushion in your timeline will help. Easier said than done, because likely you've said, okay, if I'm matched now and we have a transfer date in July, our first transfer date, I could be pregnant. I'll be pregnant during Christmas and I'll be like cozy at home and it won't be cold and that's perfect. And then delivery and, wherever delivery lands, that's perfect. My kids are out of school. So you can have this laid out in your life, which is important for a carrier to do. This has to make sense in your life. And then something gets messed up and that feels, again, personal, or that feels just like a lot of weight all of a sudden. Shifting the timeline or adding cushion in the timeline is the healthier approach. If you have a transfer set up for early July, in my mind, a timeline cushion would be, okay, I'm hopeful I'm going to be pregnant by the end of summer. I'm giving myself that timeline of like, we have some time. End of summer, good for me. I could still plan out the rest of it. And then creating emotional check-in points is going to be very helpful with your agency, also with your circle, with your intended parents, whoever needs to be involved in those check-ins. Even if things are paused, even if it's quiet and it's like, okay, well, we won't get the next update until legal is done. It's not a bad idea to be like, I know what the next step is, but like temperature check. Are we still feeling good? Is everything still going according to plan? That's not going to be something that you should be faulted for. The brain hates unknown. So kind of like waiting, you're waiting because you don't know what's happening next. The unknown is exhausting, like not knowing when the next update is coming, if the IPs are still on board, how your body will respond. Is there another cycle happening? These are a lot of question marks, and this is hard to hold. The uncertainty isn't the only frustrating part. I think in most scenarios, if you just don't know what's happening, it could take up a lot of space in your mind. It's loud, it's heavy on your chest. And then what does your brain want to do? It's like, well, I need to move this aside. So let me think about all the what if scenarios. And at least I'm feeling prepared for the bad things, which also is helpful, but not. That's sort of that spiral that we want to get rid of and avoid. How it feels, mental overload, kind of like my brain's not going to shut off. I'm bracing for bad news all the time. Many intended parents have this experience coming into surrogacy, especially if your IPs are if you have like an intended mother or a heterosexual couple, that like bracing for bad news environment is likely there for them, and it may be there for you as well. Emotional flatness, I don't feel anything, I'm tired. This is sort of that numbing experience of like, I'm just going to turn things off, because if I focus in on what's actually happening, nothing is happening, or I don't know what's happening, that's going to be too much. Hyper focus, the other side of things, where it's like, okay, I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to find out as much as possible. I'm going to Google everything. I'm going to send them a bunch of emails and get a response no matter what. This can be helpful, usually not helpful. This is indulging your brain in a way that's not necessarily helpful. Your brain is like, hey, I want to stay active. I want to figure out what's happening. But in this hyper focus lens, it's almost indulging it in this way that's like, actually, you're going to hurt me. Like, I don't want you to be this active in thinking about something that we don't have the facts for yet. And invisible worry. No one around me really gets what I'm feeling, what I'm carrying. Sometimes this is hard to explain too. Like, yes, you know when the next doctor's appointment is coming. Yes, you know what the next step is, but like, it's still so much unknown sitting in that space that it hurts, that it feels heavy. And if you say it to anyone, they're just going to be like, well, yeah, you just have to wait and figure it out. And that's not necessarily comforting. What will help? Call it out. When your brain starts to jump to worst case thinking, you need to interrupt that cycle. So like when your brain and your body are in dysfunction, your body is saying, okay, I'm stressed out. There's something going on. Like we don't know what's happening next. And I'm feeling the weight of it. Your brain is the one that can assure your body it's all good. But then your body is in this state and it's telling your brain, we need to be tripping out. We need to be freaking out about this. And your brain's like, okay, yeah, let's freak out. If your brain interrupts that cycle, which is you, which is your thoughts, and interrupts and says, hey, I don't have all the facts yet. I literally can't do anything about this. I can focus on being there for my kids, making dinner tonight, taking a shower tonight, and making sure I get 8 hours of sleep. I can focus on all of that today. That helps your brain then regulate, help your body understand, hey, it's time to regulate. We're actually not fully diving into this right now. So that process of interruption and just calling out a spiral is very, very helpful. Even though it seems really small and minute, you have to believe in it. Controlling the controllables. This is something we talked about in the last slide as well. Like, do the things that you know you can do. Plan an event. If you have a lot of time between now and this next doctor's appointment that you're really nervous about, make a plan with some friends that Friday, or like do something with the kids, or just fill the day, fill the time. Healthy distraction is super, super healthy when it's for that purpose of, okay, I'm not going to spend my time in an anxious state and worrying. I'm going to invest in something that can give me endorphins, or that can at least bring joy to those around me, which ultimately brings me joy too. So do a meal, activity, whatever that is. Create surrogacy approved breaks. Big fan of these. So you have to have daily moments, and not even moments, but even days where your whole world is not revolving around surrogacy. And even though you're a carrier, which you're very much in this world of surrogacy, you need to have those breaks where like you're with someone and we're not talking about this. Like, you're not asking me how I'm doing. You are not allowed to ask me anything about my journey. We are going to a pottery class. We are going to go watch a movie that's going to scare the crap out of me. Like, we're going to do something completely off base. I need to feel off base so that I have this space to breathe. I don't feel this pressure. I don't have to feel this obligation of updating everybody about what's happening. Creating surrogacy approved breaks. These are surrogacy approved in the sense where like you're still following the rules, right? You're not like drinking, you're not doing anything like that, but you're doing something else that gives you the space and emotional freedom to be off of surrogacy for a little bit. And then asking for clarity without apology. Again, so like, you want updates, and maybe you want updates a little bit more frequently. I don't think that's an issue. You obviously don't want to be indulging in your anxiety, right? Which I say that, and it's not in a way where it's like we're making it fun. Sometimes it's like, okay, I feel my anxiety, and I'm going to lean into it. You want to lean out as much as you can, but get the update that you need that you think will help with that. Quick stop, because I can't really see anybody's videos on. Just taking a temperature check. Any questions, feedback, scenarios that really relate with these two particular topics of waiting and just also not knowing? And again, I can't see anybody's video, so you got to pop your audio on and just talk to me. I see Sarah.
Hi, I did have a situation. I was like laughing when you said hyper focus, and they're like, "That's not good." And I was like, "Oh,"
Sorry.
because that tends to be me. Is like, well, what can I do to be more knowledgeable, to help things get better or faster, or how can I, we always say like move the ball out of my court, and sometimes I've moved every single ball out of my court. There are no more balls to move. So that resonates with me a lot. I'm sorry for the highway noise behind me. But it's relatable
Yeah.
altogether, as you're just waiting for something else to either go wrong, trying to protect yourself all the time. I'm not good at taking those mental breaks. Because I want to keep learning. I want to know more. I want to prepare myself as best as possible.
Yeah. No, I hear you. The hyper focus, I mean, I feel like everyone's guilty of this behavior. It's one that we tend, as a society, it's the one that we tend to kind of go to. The hyper focus. So the basis of hyper focusing is to provide emotional security, like at the baseline level of it. It's like your brain and body saying, "Oh, I'm not okay. I need to know. I need to know because I'm not okay." Because ultimately, there's an insecurity. There's something that I'm bracing myself for. So let me get as much information as I can to reassure myself. But the thing that happens in hyperfocus is usually you probably get the information that you need, and then you continue, and then you're like, okay, but I need more, right? Like, oh no, I need a specific, like, no, that's not enough. My body thinks that's not enough. And that's where that like calling it out and that interruption with your thoughts is vital. It's like, okay, what was the whole point of this? I'm worried because I don't know when the next appointment is. I got that information, and now I'm asking questions about what's going to happen at the appointment. How long is it going to take? What are we going to be doing? What test is happening? Right. And so that hyper focus is going on, but like reaffirming, I need to know when the appointment was, and that was my whole intention. What happens at the appointment, I will likely be finding out at the appointment. If I need to prepare ahead of time, I will likely be told, hey, you need to prepare ahead of time. So like breaking through with that like affirming talk or even just your thoughts is a practice. It's not easy, but it is one that I'd encourage you to do to interrupt hyperfocus, because again, we tend to get what we need once we start, but then we just keep going. And then your brain and body are like, this is definitely not helping. I wanted you to get information to help me calm down, and now you're giving me too much information and I can't calm down. So that's like, if that could be a visual for you, it's like drive until you get there and then realize that you've gotten there and then park the car. Like you don't need to drive around the place that you just got knowing that you knew you're going to go there. And now that you're there, realizing, okay, but am I there? Like stop that. If that's a good visual. Thank you for bringing that in the room though. All right, I'm gonna keep going. Okay, so loss. There's different types of loss in surrogacy, and these are like, there's different types of loss, period. I could have made this a bigger list, but loss, when we imagine it in this way, is a failed transfer. And a failed transfer is a hard situation. I think sometimes it gets written off as like, especially in contracts, right? Like it'll say it in contract, like, okay, we're going to do 3 cycles. If you've had 3 failed transfers, we'll figure out what to do. As if it's kind of like a, okay, we'll do it once, we'll do it twice, we'll do it 3 times. But it's hard, right? You took time off work, you likely rearranged childcare, you did all of these shots, you followed this protocol, you put the belief that it was going to work, your intended parent or parents did as well. That embryo transfer doesn't result in a pregnancy. And for most of these cases, like the idea is, okay, like let's go to the next part, let's go to the next step. But as a carrier, you sometimes still need to feel that and need to understand that, like, no, we're not going to just schedule the next transfer. Maybe I need time. What do I need? And to really pause and see how you feel. That could be a marker that is associated with many things. For you, it could be a loss. For some carriers, it can mean like almost like a failure, like my body failed, I failed. So it's really important to sit there for a second to make sure you're not glazing through something that can emotionally affect you later. A miscarriage, you experience a loss at any point. And this is a tricky one because I think for many carriers, maybe you haven't had a miscarriage before or a termination. And then you're in this experience of surrogacy, which you think, whoa, this is highly controlled. This is like science at its best. Like, what could go wrong? They've mitigated as much risk as possible. And then here's a miscarriage. Where did this come from? My body's never bailed on me this way. That can get complex. Also, depending on when that miscarriage occurs, you have likely emotionally invested in this, just the same as the intended parent, right? Like, oh, there's a little person inside of me and we're doing this, and here's my life for the next 8, 7 months. And then that's taken away. That's off the table now. The intended parents are hurt. And then there's this dynamic too in surrogacy where like there's other people and other feelings involved. And as a carrier, you sometimes take that on. Like, I need to make sure everyone's happy. If this doesn't work, was this my fault? Am I like, should I be the one who hurts more? Am I the one who hurts more? Is this my fault? And those questions I think are really common when any type of loss occurs. Medical termination is another one where this one's just complex usually. So like the example I'm giving here is like a 20-week anatomy scan revealing an abnormality. Any sort of later term loss or termination is just complex. It's going to be hard. It's going to hurt. In the beginning stages or at the end, I mean, termination just kind of sucks. You're asked to terminate the pregnancy. And sometimes for a carrier, you could be going into this surrogacy experience, obviously agreeing that, yes, like this is your child. I'm going to leave these decisions to you. This is your life. Whatever you say, like I'm gonna meet you there. And then you get to this point and maybe termination is on the table And you know what you said, like, you know, that's how you feel. Of course, this is a decision for you. You're the parent. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't have your own emotional experience around, oh, okay, like this is actually happening. We are going to terminate this pregnancy. I'm going to lose this pregnancy and physically experience termination. So this is a really hard, tricky one too. You might feel in that moment just like the realness of ending life, which for some, maybe that's a space you really haven't thought about or like understood how you'd feel about. And then also that aspect of it where maybe the navigation of who's making the decision gets a little bit tricky emotionally too. So when loss happens in surrogacy, especially in this dynamic where there's an intended parent, there's a medical team, there's a lot of people involved, it's a contextual thing. There's a lot of layers to this. It's not just emotional loss, it's relational grief, it's logistical. Like there's so many pieces in this that can get really webbed in and complex. You might not be the process, you might not be the only one like dealing with the loss itself. You might also be affected by like what's happening around the loss. Like, oh, my intended parents are acting differently toward me, or they're not talking to me right now. Or maybe they are, but like they're not giving me what I need. Maybe intended parents are on the other side thinking like, how do we support her? We're also in pain. And so it's this weird, complex emotional dynamic. Maybe your clinic or maybe your doctor, whoever is like, okay, when do you guys want to set up the next embryo transfer day? And it seems like, wait, we're just logistically moving on, like that's it. And so it's complex. What it can look like is feeling grief, but also feeling like you maybe don't deserve to grieve. So as a carrier, like you know this isn't your child, but like you're still sad. And are you allowed to be sad? I mean, even though it's not your child, that's a tricky domain. Trying to hold space for intended parents while also for yourself, like who do you need to be right now? Do you need to care for them? You know, technically it was their biological child. This is a bigger loss for them. Is it a bigger loss for them? Should I be as sad as they are? So really, again, questions you might be experiencing. Being expected to move on quickly because it wasn't your baby. Sometimes this is the external narrative that comes in that just really isn't helpful. Where if you're experiencing a loss and it's like a family member, a friend is trying to find a way to comfort you and is saying something ultimately isn't comforting, like, well, at least it wasn't yours. You know, this gets really hard as well. Being ghosted or distanced by intended parents because they don't know how to process the grief. This is a common just human challenge. Like when other people are in pain, if you think about it, like how do you help other people in pain? Some people maybe have a clearer way to do that. Some people would have no clue how to do that. Those kind of dynamics apply in a surrogacy because of that relational piece of like your intended parents just might not know what you need or might be doing what they think you need and totally missing the mark. And then on your end, you're likely thinking, okay, well, what do I need to do for them? Do I need to do anything for them? Or what if you are missing the mark for them? So it's a lot. How it feels, heartbroken, obviously. No one's going into this wanting to experience a loss. And especially with a carrier, you might have been really excited to be pregnant again. I mean, that's oftentimes why most carriers want to do this. Like, pregnancy was great. I want to do this again. I want to feel this way. And that's taken when there's a loss. Numbness, it all happens so fast, being like limited in how much time you have to process everything and just turning it all off. That tends to be a coping strategy. Feeling ashamed, especially this body experience, the bodily experience. Like, my body didn't do this with my prior pregnancies. Like, why did it do it now? Why did my body fail me now? Like, what didn't work? And feeling like this is something personal to you or your body. And then disoriented. I don't even know how to explain what I'm thinking. This sort of like a state of shock, right? Like, I'm confused. I don't know why this happened. Why would this happen? I'm not sure what to do with this. I think the next slide, just want to double check. Yes. Okay. So processing pregnancy loss. These are evidence-based ideologies and methods. So like if you were to come to someone like me in therapy and say, I just had a loss, this is what I'm going to talk to you about. And I feel like this is really wonderful to have in your tool belt on a baseline level for really any loss, but definitely for pregnancy loss. And I think specifically too for surrogacy, because it's just a different environment. It's a different dynamic with everybody. Narrative processing is sort of like, so in therapy and psychology, we have something called narrative therapy, and it's basically how powerful words are in healing. Narrative processing leans into this, where it's emphasizing that writing or speaking about your story can help make sense of loss, can be healing. And I don't know if any of you have this experience, but like this whole idea of like journaling or even a therapist talking to someone is this idea that words can be healing. There's so much power in a thought or in a sentence or in a word. So in loss, we encourage those ideas, right? Journaling, voice noting. Voice noting is actually one that's really cool and more popular now, where you can create like an audio journal. There's a lot of apps about this if you are interested, where you have an audio journal, and it's just something about saying it and something about writing it that feels really powerful. Writing a letter to the baby in this experience of loss, writing a letter to them, if that's where you feel the ping of pain the most, of like, hey, I was connecting with this little guy and I don't have that now. Or writing a letter to yourself, right? Like, hey, I need you to know something, and sharing your pain, your experience, whatever is there in a written form. It's different when it's out. It's powerful to get it out. Mind body integration, another big one. So grief lives in your body. So if you are someone who's experienced any type of loss, you can likely relate to this. You've experienced this loss and you've carried on, right? You've moved on. It's easy to like get distracted with a relationship or with the work or with your kids or just with anything. Like cognitively, we can do this well. We can get distracted well. But what happens when that happens? Your mind is saying, I'm not doing this right now. So it's going in the back. Who's holding it for you? Your body. Your body's like, all right, I'll take care of this. I won't remind you that it's here. It's going to just stay put. I can't guarantee that I can keep it forever, but I'll keep it as long as I can. And the way grief works is it'll stay put in your body until it can't. And then it manifests in whatever timeline, whatever way, usually out of nowhere. And that's when you start to really feel like, okay, I'm not okay. Grief lives in the body, so you want to integrate your mind and body in healing. This is going to look like movement, breath work, grounding touch. So, I mean, yoga and these practices, the reason why we shift them quickly when we're talking about healing is because a practice like yoga is very much, it's not like running. You have to be very intentful and mindful in yoga and like being very attentive to your body while in this state of movement and practice. That is a very good environment to release. Running is a great environment to release too. I'm not knocking that running, but the mind-body connection is loudest in a practice like yoga. So things like that, where you're connecting your mind and your body and you're moving, you're physically creating an environment of release. That's going to be really powerful. Peer support, also one of the most powerful tools. Connection eases isolation, always. Even like for connection, right? Like sometimes you go to a support setting or like a person and like they're not the best, like they're not giving you the greatest advice, but it just feels good, excuse me, to be there. That's good enough. Just being there or being with someone who can just ease a little bit of the weight around you. So in surrogacy, luckily, there are a lot of support avenues for carriers within agencies, outside of agencies. Just talking to each other is going to be very, very helpful. Cognitive reframing. So this is a CBT tool. CBT is a therapy model that's just highly, highly, highly effective. And this is where kind of what I was talking about earlier, the thought interruption process is very important. So grief can trigger a lot of unkind thoughts. You are very influential in how you think, but we're not practiced that. Like we're not taught that or practicing that on the day to day, unless I'm telling you to practice that. Notice guilt-based beliefs and replace them with compassionate truths. So this is a really powerful process. If I'm someone who's experienced a loss and I'm thinking my body failed me, like my body has never failed me before, and in this moment of time, my body failed me. I don't want that to be true. Even if my mind is saying that's true, I refuse. So a compassionate truth that I'm replacing that with is my body is powerful, is strong, and it did what it could. And that's a compassionate truth. I have no idea if my body is the reason why this didn't work or not. I have no concrete facts about that. My body did what it could. My body is strong. My body is compassionate. It did the best it could. And I'm replacing those grief triggered beliefs that are based out of guilt, that are based out of pain. And these are really well done when you write them. So if I'm thinking something, I want to write it down and I can visually want to see what I'm replacing it with. And then that's the thing that I read over and over again. Symbolic rituals, honoring what was lost is a powerful grief practice always. And in surrogacy, I've heard really beautiful ways this can happen. Planting something has probably been my favorite one. So like experiencing a loss and memorializing that experience, that loss in a very visual, tangible way, planting something, you can take care of it. You're still in this nurturing space. To go through healing, sometimes nurturing is a wonderful medicinal experience. So nurturing a plant, caring for it, and then having that reminder that it can be beautiful, it can be healthy. It doesn't have to be an experience that's only cast in this dark light. Lighting a candle, if you resonate with religion, maybe it's prayer, maybe it's something in that space that feels fulfilling to you, creating a keepsake, anything small, anything that can bring meaning would be super healing. And then grief-informed therapy. Let's say that this is just a big experience for you, that you're noticing that, hey, I did not realize this would hit me this way, or that this would feel this bad. This is where you want to go toward therapy. This is where that threshold is, and you enter it with kindness to yourself. Grief-informed therapy helps you get out of the stuck, particularly working with therapists who are trained in perinatal grief, perinatal period. Definitely someone who may have experience with just the world of surrogacy and third party, so that you're not spending time explaining things to them. They get it. They understand your environment. Let's talk about the pain. That should never be the last option, even though it's the last on this list. That is one that should be prioritized if needed, and also just highly valuable. I want to take a quick pause here. Any thoughts, feedback, any sharing experiences? Anything that you like hearing, anything that you didn't like hearing?
I really love the amount that you have here, and I think that mind-body integration can be so impactful. Something that's helped me is also big movement. So I don't know how that is, just dancing it out and just connecting with that, or singing and even like yelling into a pillow, whatever it is, like that full body integration is so impactful. So I appreciate how much you put into pointing that out for us.
Yeah. And everything you said is wonderful. I mean, for some, maybe it's not going to be yoga, but maybe it's going to be kicking the crap out of a boxing bag or whatever it is, right? Like, whatever it is, your body wants to grieve too. And oftentimes your body is holding it all for your mind. So just thinking happy thoughts might not work. Physically experiencing moments of release, whether that's exertion or whether that's just gentle movement or whether that's screaming, like all of that is appropriate. There's no wrong answers when you're thinking about how do I allow a space for my brain and body to release. I mean, there are some wrong answers. Don't go the unhealthy route. I should say that. But like, other than going in unhealthy routes, whatever you got to do.
Right.
Thank you. Anyone else before I move on to grief? Okay. All right, so understanding grief and surrogacy. Grief gets a bad rap. I think people are scared to hear the word grief. I was originally very scared of this word grief. And it's been my whole mission to talk about grief often because grief is not your enemy. Grief can be an ally in a lot of special ways. And in surrogacy, grief is there a lot. And I want to point out how that could look. Before the journey, even in the planning stage for a carrier, grief can be there. It could be quite quiet. It could be this idea of letting go of what pregnancy will actually feel like because it's a different type of pregnancy. The pregnancy before that you had, where you're daydreaming about the nursery and making fun plans and buying the cute clothes, this may be different. And that could be something to grieve. Navigating unexpected emotions around not keeping the baby. There's a very logistical reality that yes, this is not my biological child, and I'm going to be handing over this child to their parents. And yes, that can be fully cognitively understood, but that doesn't mean that there won't be this emotional complexity to that. Wait, I never did that in my prior pregnancies. I held the baby that came out of my body, and I won't do that this time. Realizing that this pregnancy will ask you to share space in a very different and kind of bizarre way, right? With other people making decisions, timelines. This is all so unfamiliar. And that can be a tricky landscape to start feeling comfortable in. Even though you already knew, right? It doesn't matter. It's the emotions don't really care about what you thought through. They're going to still do what they do. During the journey, grief can appear in real time, even if things are going well. So obviously in like a failed cycle, failed transfer, or if a cycle doesn't progress, there's a little bit of ickiness there. Medical complications, tough appointments, prolonged bed rest. Maybe this is a pregnancy that you're just so sick in. You have way more nausea this time. Your legs are hurting. You don't remember sciatica in your prior experiences. And it's again, this aspect of this didn't happen before. Why is this happening now? And I have to deal with this reality. Feeling disconnected from your usual sense of self or family. I think in pregnancy in general, this happens, right? Like we just kind of lose touch of the version of ourselves we're really comfortable with because we're having a physical experience. And in surrogacy, that can get complicated as well, because not only are you having a physical experience that's different, you're also having a very emotional and relational experience that's different. And then mourning the loss of ease, energy, emotional stability. This is sort of the one that comes with pregnancy always. We're uncomfortable, we're physically different, our energy's low, we can't connect to our kids the way we want to, can't connect to our partner the way we want to. It can get tricky. And then after the journey, grief often lingers. And even if you don't want it to be there, it likely will be there. When the world thinks, hey, you're good, right? Like it's done, you should be fine. So the emotional aftermath of handing the baby over, again, you know this, right? You've signed up and you understand that surrogacy is this. Yet that could still feel some sort of weight where you have that physical experience, you have there's this baby crying in the room, your heart, your instincts, your maternal primal self is thinking, okay, hold the baby, but that's not happening with you. Hormonal shifts and emotional depletion, the environment of pregnancy in general, but there's a complication, it's a complexity in surrogacy where usually you have this little baby that you get to hold, and in the moments of feeling hard, you have co-regulation with this little body, and you don't get those opportunities in surrogacy. Processing how intense you might, by the way, I'm not saying you definitely don't, but I'm saying it's not that consistency of your own child. Processing how intense, intimate, and complex the experience truly was. For some, this was probably a lot. And maybe you're in a journey and you're like, this is a lot. I did not realize it was going to be this way. So coming out of a journey or even post-birth, you could be left with just all of that stuff and having to process like, this went so differently than what I thought. This was way harder than I thought. I'm not okay. I thought I would be okay. And just navigating that space and a lot of that loss and grief. And then also just feeling unseen now that the journey's over. That's a big one. And I feel like that one we can say out loud. you go through an experience being a carrier, completely cared for. Like this embryo, this pregnancy is cared for on a molecular level. There's so many people invested in your wellness. There's so many people checking up on you. There's so many people who are praising you and saying these lovely things. And we get to the end of this journey, you deliver this baby, and it's kind of quiet. It's not happening as much. Maybe it's not happening at all. Your medical team's like, okay, go ahead, speak to your OB now. Your IPs are like, thank you so much. We'll send you an update in a couple months. And it's just back to normal life. Everyone's like, okay, you got that over with. Let's get things rolling again. And that can be really hard to navigate. So understanding grief and surrogacy, it's not always loud. When we think about grief, I think we think about this like mourning state of like extreme sadness. That's not grief's usual space. Grief is quiet sometimes. Grief can feel like showing up, grief can feel like you're heartbroken, or it can show up in that way of like, I'm crying, I'm sad. It could also look like emotional flatness. It could look like going to work every day, doing the things that you need to do with your kids and making dinner and then going to bed and then rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. It can look like irritability, numbness, feeling kind of lost or not yourself anymore. For carriers, it can also show up even if there hasn't really been like a clear loss. You could still be grieving just normalcy. You can come out of an experience being a carrier and have a lot of questions there that you didn't expect. Like, who am I now? Am I changed? Should I be changed? I feel different. Or also kind of processing expectations that didn't pan out. Let's say the dynamic with your intended parents just takes an abrupt shift after birth, and what you thought would be available to you is no longer there. So a lot of dynamics that are hard. What it can look like, feeling guilty for being sad because it wasn't your baby, that's a tricky one. It was definitely your body and definitely your experience, and you were part of a big story. Crying unexpectedly, this is when you get those reminders. I heard a really powerful example the other day of like a carrier who was going to meet up with her intended parent and see the baby. This was maybe like a week or 10 days after birth. Went to TJ Maxx, wanted to get some like cute little outfits for the baby. Went to the checkout lady was like, oh my gosh, these are so cute. Someone gave birth recently. How fun. Who are you getting these for? And that was a moment for that carrier where she just like, that was it. She completely broke down. She wanted to say it was me. I gave birth. I'm buying clothes. And it was a weird thing for her because she is usually on the receiving end of that, right? This would have been something that I would have been thought about in that way. People would have bought me clothes. So this can show up in just random moments. Numbness, disconnection, not knowing what you feel, feeling like something's off. Anger toward the situation is a very normal experience as well. Maybe you're thinking about it all and you're like, I hate that they did it that way. Why was I asked to go through that? Why was I put in that position? And then over apologizing also, just that experience too, where if you're on the other end and you're just feeling apologetic or regretful for how things worked, or in a loss, in a pregnancy loss scenario, how your body didn't do what it was supposed to do. Feelings, numbness, we talk about this one a lot, disconnection, just kind of trying to turn it off. Irritability, this is another very popular mode you may get into, because irritability feels like a release. It's like for your body, sometimes it's like, yeah, I'm getting it out. I'm getting it out in a bad way. I mean, it's not a healthy way, it can be destructive, but sometimes your body thinks, get it out, be angry. Emotional fog, I'm not really sad, I'm not really okay, like I don't know where I'm at. Delayed sadness, this is one I see a lot in surrogacy, where everything's happening, we get birth, I'm fine, everything's fine, I'll be fine. And then you'll just kind of hit a moment and it's not fine. Usually that's when your body is telling you, hey, I can't hold this anymore. So I'm gonna have to let it go. You got to deal with it. And then pressure to perform, thinking, all right, everyone thinks I'm strong. I signed up to be a carrier. I have to be the one that's successful. Like I have to be the one that can do this for them. I committed to this. And then something going wrong and thinking I've let everyone down. So I want to cover this dual process model of grief. But really quickly, can I take a touch point or temperature here? Any thoughts, questions, feedback, experiences about these topics? Anything you liked to hear, didn't like to hear? Just pulling this up in case I can see. Okay, I'll chug along. So the dual process model of grief. So there's models of grief. The one that you're likely familiar with, that everyone's familiar with, is that stage of grief, right? Where there's denial, there's anger, and you go through these stages. That's been debunked for a lot of good reasons. Because the way grief works is it's not so structured. Grief is like the opposite of structured. You don't go through one feeling and then go through another feeling and then go through another feeling in grief. Grief is a mess. Grief is all over the place. And so a very realistic processing form of grief should have it in a way that bounces off other experiences and feelings. That's what the dual process model of grief does. In this processing mode, you're not getting over anything. The idea of getting over something is not helpful. Getting over something means mind will distract and body will store. And again, if you haven't learned this yet, if your body's storing whatever it's storing, it can only do that for a set period of time before it's like, I can't hold this anymore. You have to deal with this. So we don't want to store and store and store. We want to process, and you can live with grief while also living your life. Those can happen at the same time. Grief is not a long cry. It's not one thing that happens and then something else happens. It's messy, it shifts, it goes back and forth. For a carrier who's experienced any type of loss or is experiencing grief, you're going to go back and forth between I'm feeling it and moving forward. And that's the normative space. The dual process model talks about two zones you want to be in. You want to be in loss oriented and restoration oriented. Loss oriented is where you are sitting with the stuff. You're sitting with the sadness, you're naming what hurts, you're feeling the emotional weight. This is you crying in the shower. This is you not making plans. This is you isolating. This is you engage in those behaviors that gives you space to process the loss. Restoration oriented spaces will focus on what we say is moving forward. So this is where you are going back to work. You are making plans with your kids. You're making dinner because that's something you want to do. You're laughing and you're not feeling bad about laughing. You're finding normalcy. So the dual process model tells you, hey, you need to be doing both of these things. If you're feeling sad, you have to be feeling sad. And should something happen that's making you laugh now and that's making you feel a little bit good, you have to feel good. And then that's going to do its thing as often and as long as it needs to. You could bounce between both in any given hour, in any given day. That's not just okay, that's exactly how it's supposed to go. And so I think this is a really enlightening mode of processing for many people, because I think even from my experience, I thought, no, like if I'm sad, I have to be really sad. Like I can't be happy when I'm sad. That's not going to work. People are going to judge me. People are going to think I'm fine when I'm not. And when I let that go and I realized, wait, I can be sad in my car crying, and then I can get out and I can go enjoy my kid's game and be super happy and excited for him. And I'm not going to hold guilt for those two things happening in the same 30 minutes. That is the dual process model. That is how we live with grief. You don't actually ever get out of it. You don't get over it. You live with it. Another good example that I love to share is like, if you think about grief, you think about like a circle, which is your life. And then grief is sort of a circle that's put inside your circle, a darker circle, right? Like a black one. And for a while, grief fills up a lot of the space in your life. So it's filling in that circle quite a bit. But what happens over time is your outer circle, your life circle, that's going to keep growing. It's going to keep getting bigger. It's going to mold and shape into different things. And how much space your grief is taking is going to get smaller, but it moves around. So maybe at some points your grief is kind of bouncing off the walls and you really feel it. At other points, it could be just silent in the middle, and life is loud and happy and good. And again, that little ball will move around when it needs to, but it's always there. So that idea with pregnancy loss, with any sort of grief really, is that you can live with it and you can still live life. And there's no guilt for both at the same time. It has to be both at the same time. definitely want to check in on this one. Any thoughts, feelings, feedback? Does this relate or resonate for you? Oopsies. Okay, this one I'm going to be stubborn. I'm going to wait till someone talks because I feel like there's got to be something. And Sunshine said, don't be shy. And we have 4 more minutes just to give you some healthy pressure. And I'm not going to force you. Okay, I got some feedback here. I have a comment that says, I'm still waiting for legal, but I'm loving the info. Thank you for the feedback. Okay, so I'm going to keep going then. So how to process grief in day-to-day life. In your experience with surrogacy and your experience with pregnancy, you want to ask yourself to keep this like in a functional way that works with your day-to-day. You want to ask yourself when going through grief, what do I need today? Do I need to feel today or do I need to function? Is it feel or function? Am I waking up in a funk? I need to feel this out. Am I waking up neutral? I have a bunch of things to do. I'm going to function. And creating space for both modes is going to be the most helpful. It's not one or the other. Like if I'm feeling sad, I should probably feel sad because that's going to help me feel better. Like that doesn't necessarily work. If you're feeling sad, you're feeling sad. And then you're creating space or opportunities to feel good, to move forward. And then you have that experience. You're watching something funny, you start laughing. Oh, I'm in restoration now. I get to function. I get to move forward. Don't judge your swings either. 1 hour can look different from the next, especially in early stages of grief. You'll be crying and then laughing and then sad and then planning a fun Disney trip and then just doing all of those things in any given time. And that's perfectly fine. Using small cues to check in. Again, your brain and your body have that connection going on, but sometimes we need to interrupt it with our thoughts. We have power over that. So am I carrying grief right now or carrying forward? If I'm feeling confused about how I'm feeling, let me just clarify these 2 categories and see where I'm at. You don't have to stay in the pain to honor it. This is a societal thing too, where like sometimes if someone's experienced loss or is in grief, we expect them to act a certain way or behave a certain way. And if they don't, we're like, oh, they're not in pain. Maybe it didn't hurt them. They're not affected. That's not, ignore that. You don't have to stay in pain to honor it. You can be in pain and enjoy at the same time. If you've experienced any type of grief or loss, you know that. So allow yourself to move in and out. That's how grief works. That's how you live with grief. And grief gets quieter over time. So you don't have to feel doomed in that position. If you're like upset, I'm happy, upset, I'm happy. You just need to grant grief and your own kind of emotional state the time to build space around it. And that is all. So Q&A. Any questions from this material? Anything that really sticks with you? Anything that you want to like pocket and keep should you need it? Any feedback?
I like the permission to move in and out of difficult feelings and not feel like grieving has to look any particular way.
Yeah.
I had a really overall very smooth first journey, but I'm just trying to put some tools in my belt, knowing that so many surrogates before have had an incredible, really first journey, and then it almost makes it more difficult when they go into their second journey, and then there is a first-time miscarriage or a first-time failed transfer or something else. So I'm just trying to build some skills as I get ready for this next endeavor. So I'm prepared if those things do happen, even though I had such a great smooth journey before.
Yeah. Yeah. I think your mindset is really healthy. Let me get some tools in case I need them. And I hope that you can find comfort in some of these tools. And a lot of these are things you can put in practice like literally right now. so that even if nothing goes wrong, which is the hope and the goal, you can manage some of the ebb and flow of those emotional states. Like grief is notorious for having high intensity emotions, but like you can have another situation happen that's not necessarily grief, but still high intensity. The emotional shift is large. So a lot of this, like that narrative reframing or like just thought interruption, those are wonderful tools for any time you feel an abrupt happy to sad or an abrupt calm and angry, like any of those dramatic spaces, these will help. These are like great emotional regulators. Thank you. Anyone else? Great, Sam.
Yeah, I guess my question would be, would you recommend, I'll share my personal journey was, my goodness, about 5 years ago, and I experienced loss just with, failed transfers and the heaviness of that and switching to, a new match just because their, embryos unfortunately weren't of the greatest quality. But of course, there's still guilt in that, and there's still that pressure of feeling like you did something wrong, whether it was with your medication cycle or whatever it may be. But it was so long ago that I may have unaware, already moved through it, or do you feel like it's good to actually revisit those spaces again and with these tools and see if there's anything that comes up?
Yeah, I like to measure it this way. If something is in my past that when I go there and I think about it, I immediately want to retreat, or I immediately want to like turn it off, or I immediately want to be like, nope, not today. Um, that's worth revisiting, because what you're being told is usually that's a, if we really like pay attention, that's going to be a physical experience. Like your chest is going to start feeling tight. You're going to start feeling like ugh, and your body is basically saying, hey, I'm still holding on to this. So like it's here, I'll hold it for you, but I can't guarantee when I'm going to need to release this too. So usually in those situations, if you can think about something and feel that your body telling you, hey, I still got it for you, it's worth mentally exploring. Um, and that's where like even through mind body integration, like it doesn't have to be like deep work, which I think can be really intimidating for some, like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna have to go to therapy, and like no, you really don't. You can go back to this experience, you can write about this experience, you could just like talk it through again. Talk it through as if you're someone else. Like, how do you see this in a different way? And then whatever you feel from it, by now the hope would be is you know how to work through big feelings. And if you don't, there's some of these tools that I've listed. But if you do, like if you need to dance, like you need to put on a song and think, like literally immerse yourself in thought about that time and what happened with loud music playing, and just let your body do what it needs to do, that could be extremely healing too. So I would say yes, anything that you can think of that your body starts to tingle for is worth working through. That's how you're getting rid of the grief in your body. That's how you're allowing a space for like true peace. Your mind's going to be good at distracting. Your body's not having that.
Yeah, I love that invitation because you're right. If there's something there and there's that tightness, you know that your body's still holding on to it and that you need to release it in any way. And the writing, if that speaks to you, is also such a nice,
Yeah.
gentle invitation where you can be writing a letter to yourself then or right now or just, write and burn. I love that invitation because that kind of allows you to also know like what am I holding on to as you're just writing freely.
And with any physical loss, like failed transfers are kind of like a physical loss, right? It is related to this physical experience. Right to your body, right? Like I'm so pissed at you. What the heck? Like we were supposed to do this. This was supposed to be fine. And look, I understand this was out of our control. And I don't want to blame you for this. I don't want to hold this in this way. And like that's the letter you write if that feels good, right? It's to anything. It's just to understand the experience, and writing has so much power and release. It's a mind body integration as well. It doesn't have to be just big physical movements. Writing is one of those too.
Yeah, I love the way you also gave us different perspective as to what loss is, because I think when we think loss, the picture is a pregnancy loss, a miscarriage, or
Yeah,
a failed
big one.
transfer. There's so much more like the intended parents, that relationship, there might be a loss there. I think a lot of us come and we have not a great first maybe journey, and then our continued journeys where we're wanting to find, whether it's better support, a different agency, whatever it may be, a different relationship, there's loss in that. And there's room to explore that first journey or whatever it may be, that you didn't have those expectations met. And maybe you did have trauma for that. And what was that loss
Yeah.
is so beautiful, because even me going into the webinar, I was like, hey, we're going to talk about, physical loss, but there's experience loss that is so
So
impactful.
many layers. Yeah, so many layers. Loss is not the big bad thing. Loss is this quiet, small things often. Sometimes those quiet, small, little things are the actual ones that hurt the most. Grace, I know you unmuted earlier. Is there anything that you wanted to share?
Well, I guess I felt very blindsided in my second journey. My first journey went very smooth, and I know Sarah kind of shared that her going into her second journey, you kind of had that fear of like, what if it doesn't go as smoothly as my first journey? And that's exactly what happened to me. I feel like I've hit road bump after speed bump after getting mowed over. I feel like, I mean, I'm being really dramatic, but my second journey has just been so long, and I had a miscarriage, my first ever miscarriage at 9 weeks. And then the intended parents broke the match, and that felt like a different loss, and like I didn't do my job, and all of those things that you feel like so deeply. And I even anticipated, like, I don't know if this journey is going to go as smoothly, because it just didn't feel like it could. And so this is really helpful for me just to like think about, I felt like my coping was to just jump into the next possible match as soon as I could and focus on that.
Yeah.
And then that ended up falling through. And so I'm right here in this weird limbo area, and I'm like, maybe I need to stay here and like heal a little bit before jumping again, because that was my distraction, was to just get the balls going again and think about it in a different journey capacity, I guess. So
yeah,
it's just really helpful. So
happy to hear that.
yeah.
And something that I'll say too, that like when I say like grief holds in your body, on a baseline, on a biological level, this can be proven. Like this is a different baseline biologically for your body. When you're in a state of stress, in a state of grief, in a state of mourning, your body's working a little bit differently. So ultimately, when you're thinking about a physical experience like pregnancy, and this is like on all ends, for someone who's trying to naturally conceive, for a carrier who's trying to make sure that this embryo transfer goes well, like you also just want to think like, I need my body to feel safe. Like I need my body to feel safe, and that this is not going to be something that is going to add more intensity to like my biological baseline. And so to your point, Grace, like if you are thinking, hey, like I want to do this again, but like is now the time, like this could be the moment or the lapse in your timeline where it's like, okay, I need to pay attention to what she needs. Like what does my body need right now? How do I make sure my body also feels safe? Because not only have I had these relational losses, but I did have this physical loss too. And like I need to make sure I'm okay, and not distracting or just like mentally moving forward and leaving all this stuff in here. So that's a healthy recommendation.
Thank you.
I think something, I don't know if you've touched on it, but I've seen a lot of surrogates experiencing lately is when you have your heart set on doing this journey and completing it, and then a series of events happens and you end up finding out that you can't do the journey. You're disqualified after a certain number of embryo transfers fail, or a certain number of miscarriages that you had made these plans for, even like, and then maybe there's some guilt in it too when you're thinking about, I had made plans for the compensation for what I was going to do for my family with this compensation, and then now I can't do this anymore, and I'm back to the drawing board, and now those things that I had planned to do I'm not going to be able to do. And it's sad for your intended parents too, but then also that part of it, and I don't think people talk about that enough, because that's really hard on women who put themselves through the screening and even to get to that far in the process and haven't really received much compensation up to that point.
Oh, 100%. And the thing, why I mentioned grief so much in surrogacy is that like it's there because loss is there in so many different ways, and it's almost like compounding losses. So like a carrier who's starting their screening process is already seeing their future, right? And like, oh, you're not going to pass medical clearance because you have a polyp. So, okay, there's a dig at my potential for this future, right? Like, here's a reality, a loss. And then maybe you get to another point and it's like, oh, well, we can't start for another 6 months. And it's like another loss. Here's this version of what I thought would be happening. It's not happening. And then in that scenario that you're mentioning, Sunshine, where like, I want to be a surrogate. I'm all in. I have this vision for my life. This helps me get there. And I actually physically or psychologically or just logistically can't do it. That's a huge loss. That is a huge moment to grieve. And I think you're right. It's a hard place because from an agency's perspective, you want to support your carriers. But if someone can't be a carrier, like where's the level of support? Where does the line get drawn for someone? On a carrier's end, you can never get a guarantee going through this process. You can go through the screening, you can get to, first trimester, second trimester, still things can happen. And so I think the compensation aspect is always the really challenging and impactful loss to grieve. Because for many women, for many families, this can be life-changing money. And not only is it life-changing money for your family, but like you're changing a life. Like what better package, right? Like you're helping someone else in this crazy, amazing, beautiful way. So when you lose that, I think that's an immense loss. And to grieve a loss like that is going to be a lot of the things that I mentioned. But that one hurts a lot, I think, because it's a reality loss. It's big. It's like this is something that can change my trajectory. I no longer get to do this. I no longer get to change my trajectory in this way. What am I going to do? And unfortunately, with something like that, who is there to support you would be limited. It is something that, ultimately your life, your factors, like that's going to be something that you're going to want to invest in.
Mhm. So it's
But
taking
yeah, it's tricky.
it's taking a pause and acknowledging that and letting yourself be okay with
Yes.
grieving that loss, basically.
And just like in any loss, finding meaning is also powerful. This might not have been the route for you. This might have been such an amazing option, but for you, your story, your path, your family, this was not the right one. And what is the right one? What's the right path for me? And we have to do that so many ways in our life, right? We have to do that in various relationships, when we like decide where we want to go to school, what we want to learn, and what we want to do with our jobs. Like we always get to these little crossroads of like, where's my life going now? And so that's just sort of like a human grief experience that happens to all of us in different ways, where we have to navigate what's forward and what's reality. But this one definitely hurts for someone who's like mentally, physically, emotionally invested in helping someone and being in return just given an opportunity to change their life. That's just going to hurt any way you spin it. Yeah. The tools that I mentioned though can still apply here. Narrative reframing, just interrupting your guilt, shame thoughts, just understanding that there's power in releasing the grief that comes from this physically, all of that.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so much.
You're welcome.
much. Grateful for this.
So I'm done. If anybody wants to ask me any other questions though, I think what I'll talk to you, Sunshine and Casey, about is I have like a one pager that can be really helpful with just some of this information if you'd like to distribute it. And then I know that you wanted to talk about future topics, so wondering how you want to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about future topics. If anybody is still on here and has other future topics, since you actually showed and attended today, I know it was really last minute, so we put this together a week before launching it. So thanks for Sarah for being here, and Britt, anybody who was able to attend and will probably watch the recordings. Um, I would love your input on topics that you'd like to cover. I know Dr. Sadaf had some suggestions of things. Do you have anything off the top of your head, Sarah, that you would want to talk about? Or Brittany, or do you want to hear some of her suggestions? Yeah, me too.
Cool. There's a lot of cool topics, but I think the ones that tend to be really useful is one can be just a relational, how to manage the intended parent gestational carrier relationship dynamic.
Love
It's
that one.
it's different, right? It's not like any other relationships in your life, and it has some nuances to it. So that tends to be a really helpful topic where we're talking about those communication styles, about conflict resolution. I mean, how do you just navigate where this relationship grows and goes? So that's a good one. Getting a lot of nods for that one. And then
That one's my favorite. That's my vote, and I haven't heard the rest.
I mean, that could definitely be the next event. And I could also send over a list of just the ones we love to talk about, and maybe that goes out shared, whatever you'd like. The other one that I think is also helpful is just even if you're on the journey or you're starting a journey, or even if you've done a journey, you're starting a new one, just the emotional preparing for surrogacy. And that gives us like an emotional roadmap of the entire thing. So like in the beginning, how are we emotionally preparing for what's happening? Throughout the journey, how are we navigating these dynamics, this relational stuff? And then for birth and at the end of the journey, how are we getting our hearts and minds ready for that part? And a little bit of post-birth as well. So that one tends to be a great one. It gives you like the full landscape emotionally of surrogacy and how to just navigate what to keep in mind.
I want that one too.
All right, so that's the two I have off the top of my head, but I'm happy to send over a list. And yeah, these tend to be really good topics, even as a refresher, even if you've gone.
You like either of those, Sarah?
I love the first one, and I started thinking of some other potentials. Like I had a really good support going into surrogacy in general, but I'm thinking about some of the other sad stories that other surrogates have shared where, there were close family members that were not supportive of them entering a journey, and like relationships outside of like the IP surrogate relationship that are lost, and different like boundaries that people had to set because they're like, this is the choice that I've made. And I'm speaking of grief. There's a whole area of grief of like, wait, I'm supposed to be enjoying this process of surrogacy, and yet these people who are not directly involved in it are making it kind of sucky, or making you feel bad for it, or saying the horrendous things that people who are ignorant say.
Yep. Yeah. So I appreciate that you also mentioned that. We have sort of like a overhead topic of like managing life outside of surrogacy. And in that umbrella, we really do spend time thinking and talking about like, what does this look like in your life with other people? How are you managing those conversations? How are we managing relationships outside in your family or friend circles that are like intrusive or harmful or not helpful? So that dynamic of kind of making sure your life is still in a healthy state while going through surrogacy, relationships, family dynamics, that could be one too.
So good. So many good topics.
Yeah, we'll be here every month. Yeah.
I'll see you next one. Would love it. But I'm excited. And I think also just having, these are always kind of like tricky. Someone's like, oh, what's going to happen? What are they going to say that I don't already know? But I hope today you've realized that like there could be some really helpful tidbits or even reminders that maybe you knew, but you're just like, okay, I need to hear that again, to just help you feel more confident moving forward.
Thank you so much. Yeah, send us that list, and maybe we'll just drop a poll, Sam, and see what is most popular for next topics, and also get some date and times that work for more people to be able to attend live, because I would love for more people to be able to join the conversation.
Yeah, the conversation aspect really helps. I mean, Sam, Sarah, Grace, your contributions were really, I think, powerful. They always are. We get to hear perspective. So thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
All right. Have a great weekend. Happy Friday. Enjoy, relax.
Have a great weekend, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.